Hi there, I'm Dave Hearn, and I'm Director of Kissimmee Park Observatory and the creator of Star Hopping. In this week's Star Hopping Extra, we'll continue our series of episodes dedicated to help you plan for and view the great North American solar eclipse in August 2017. In this installment, we'll talk about the different ways to capture and photograph this amazing spectacle. More great stuff about that right after this. Stay tuned. Hey, hello, hi, and welcome to episode 57 of Star Hopping. I'm Dave Hearn, and I'm feeling just radiant to be your host. In this series of programs, we'll show you the most beautiful sights in the night sky and explain exactly how to find them with your binoculars or your telescope. So this week we're doing part 2 of our series about the great North American solar eclipse coming up on Monday, August 21st. If you didn't see part 1 in the earlier episode 54 of Star Hopping, you might want to check that one out before watching this week's show. You can see it at starhopping.org/SH054. So as I mentioned in part 1, I'm headed to the mountains of North Georgia, more specifically the summit of Brasstown Bald, the highest point in the state of Georgia. It's not exactly on the center line, so I'll lose about 15 seconds of totality, but I think the 360-degree view from the summit will be worth that extra time in the dark of the moon. But in my research about the eclipse, I understand that mobility is essential in order not to be hindered by clouds. So we need to consider Brasstown Bald as a starting point for me. Fred Espenak, famous for devoting his entire life to viewing every total solar eclipse that there is, and being a renowned expert on all kinds of eclipses, did say that the willingness to be mobile was the #1 success criteria for viewing an eclipse. After all, if you're going to go to the effort of traveling hundreds of miles to see a total eclipse, and then if an adjustment is needed due to weather of even 300 or 400 more miles, isn't it worth it? You'll be glad you went the extra mile when you get to experience totality and get some great images of nature's greatest show. So that's a great segue. Let's get started with the topic for this episode, a list of different methods for photographing the Great American Eclipse. We'll talk about them right after this break. Star Hopping would like to thank our wonderful supporters on Patreon. Your contributions will allow us to create and provide more quality astronomy content. We appreciate your generosity and support. So I think it's a very natural desire to try and capture a grand celestial event such as our upcoming eclipse. It's very important to judge how big of an effort do you really want to take on. The more gear you have, the more complicated the activities will be, and there's more stuff to potentially go wrong. But no matter whether you go simple or complex, you can still get wonderful images from the event. Here are 5 different ways to capture this celestial show. First, time-lapse movies for landscape and eclipse events. Second, real-time movies of totality. Third, pinhole lens shots. 4, zooms and telephoto lenses. And lastly, 5, small telescopes. So let's take these one by one and start with time-lapse movies to capture the landscape and eclipse effects that will occur. If you're fortunate enough to be at a high elevation to be able to see the surrounding landscape, a time-lapse movie would be an excellent method to capture the approach of the dark shadow of the moon as it races across the land at well over 1,000 miles an hour, heading toward your position. Then of course you'll be capturing the onset of totality and finally third contact when the total phase itself finally ends. For this type of capture, you'll need a tripod, a medium focal length lens, and a way to automate the exposures such as an intervalometer. No solar filter is required for this particular setup. For more information on basic time-lapse astrophotography, you can check out episode 48 of Star Hopping. The important thing to be aware of for a time-lapse is that the sun will be moving through the sky from east to west during your image series. You need to determine what the altitude and azimuth the sun will be for your location at totality, and then center your camera frame on that point. This will ensure that your time-lapse will have totality right in the center of the frame. For example, at my viewing site on the summit of Brasstown Bald in extreme northeast Georgia, the sun during totality will be at azimuth 213 degrees, which is in the southwestern sky. It'll also be at 63.5 degrees altitude, about 2/3 of the way up to the zenith. You can find a solar eclipse computer for your location at the U.S. Naval Observatory website. I'll place a link to it in the show notes for this episode, which can be found at starhopping.org/SH057. Okay, let's move on to number 2, real-time movies of totality. I expect this is going to be the most common capture of the eclipse on social media. Basically, everyone's going to want to take movies, right? All you need here is your cell phone camera or a DSLR in video mode sitting on a tripod. No solar filter is required. This is just like taking movies during the day and the sun happens to be in the frame. The great benefit of a real-time movie is it'll capture all the sound effects of the people around you enjoying the event with their shouts of amazement. I think we'll also be seeing a lot of real-time streaming from eclipse watchers all across the country. I'll be live streaming myself on Eclipse Day from first contact through third contact, so stay tuned here on YouTube or Facebook. Haven't decided where I'm going to do it yet. More about that as we get closer to the event. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the list. Number 3, pinhole lens shots. One very cool capture during the eclipse is to catch the images created by pinhole cameras during the eclipse. Really, any small hole or shape cast by everyday objects, such as the leaves and trees, can act as a pinhole camera. As I mentioned in part 1, normally the sun has a perfectly round dish shape, and the patterns seen on the ground are round. But between first and second contact, the sun is shaped like a crescent. On the ground, you'll see tiny projections of the solar crescent formed by the spaces between the leaves or anything with small holes that let the sunlight pass through. This is fun to capture on the ground or on someone's face as a neat memento of the event. So we'll get into some more serious methods for capturing the eclipse with your camera right after this break. Would you like to see the scripts, images, and star charts that I present in each episode of Star Hopping in written form? Well, you can. They're available in our Field Notes digital guides that we produce for each and every episode of Star Hopping. Field Notes guides are available right back to episode 1 of Star Hopping, and you can put them on your phone or tablet to take with you out to your favorite observing site. Our Field Notes are available in our digital store individually in seasonal bundles or by subscription, where you can receive these useful digital guides in your inbox sent to you the same day as when we publish each new episode of Star Hopping. Check out our selection of Field Notes in our digital bookstore by visiting starhopping.org/digital store. So let's get serious with the next item on the list, zoom lenses and super telephoto lenses. So now we'll talk about seriously capturing the main event with optics. The best method for capturing the solar eclipse is with a zoom lens or a super telephoto lens mounted on a telescope mount or tracking platform. The focal length of the lens will really determine exactly what you can capture. You'll need a lens of 400mm to 1000mm to frame the sun and its corona properly. Of course, the lens must be fitted with a proper solar filter, as we discussed in part 1 of this series. At 600mm, you'll be able to capture approximately 3 solar diameters, so the entire sun and corona will be visible. At 1000mm and over, you'll be much more close up, with the solar disk filling 50 to 75% of the frame. This level of magnification is really good to capture the crescent shape of the sun between first and second contact. Because lenses of this length allow for higher magnification, we have to mount them on a telescope mount or a tracking platform that tracks the motion of the sun. If the camera and lens were not mounted this way, the sun would move out of the center and possibly out of the frame as the Earth rotates. The tracking platform motion keeps the sun centered for the duration of the event. One challenge with using a telescope mount is that it's very difficult to polar align the mount during the day. You don't have Polaris, the North Star, to use. Recently, I came across a great idea that I wanted to share here. Do you have a planetarium app on your phone that allows you to hold it above your head at night and see the stars and constellations in that part of the sky? Well, this is the key to aligning your mount during the day. Just place your phone on the polar axis of your mount. you're essentially looking down at the ground, but the phone app will think it's looking at or near the south celestial pole. Just adjust the mount so that it shows to be aligned with the south celestial pole and you'll be polar aligned. Neat trick, huh? I liked it. And last but not least, the obvious choice that you would think you would make would be a small telescope with your camera mounted at its prime focus. The main consideration here again is the magnification of the scope and its focal length. The same framing limits apply. You'll need to have a telescope with an objective focal length of 1500 millimeters or less. Otherwise, the sun's disk won't fit in the camera frame, particularly if you're using a crop frame DSLR camera. You'll need to go through the polar alignment method that I just discussed a couple minutes ago. For more information about basic prime focus astrophotography, you can check out episode 26 of Star Hopping, found on my site at starhopping.org/sh026. For my own astrophotography effort on the summit of Brasstown Ball, Georgia during the eclipse, I'll be using an Ioptron Smart EQ equatorial mount with my two Canon DSLRs mounted on it. This Canon 6D full-frame DSLR will be connected to an Orion 500mm Maksutov lens with a 2x teleconverter, so it yields a total focal length of 1000 millimeters. This one will be used to get close-ups of the solar disk. The Canon 60D is a crop frame DSLR, so it has an inherent 1.6x multiplier. So on it, I'm going to mount my Canon 100 to 400mm L-zoom lens racked out to 400mm. This will give a total focal length of 640 millimeters, and it'll be perfect for catching the entire corona. Both lenses will be fitted with my Thousand Oaks White Light Mylar solar filters. So these two cameras will be controlled by software on my MacBook Pro called Solar Eclipse Maestro. It's a donationware application that'll time all the events for your location and allow you to program a script to control the cameras. It also allows you to perform live viewing from each camera onto the computer screen, as well as to provide a countdown timer for all the events. I'll provide a link to Solar Eclipse Maestro in the show notes, again at starhopping.org/sh057. On top of all that gear, I'm going to also have a Canon 100D mounted on a tripod doing a time lapse. And finally, I'll be using my iPhone to live stream the event and get movies. So hopefully I'll be able to perform all 5 approaches that I talked about before for capturing the event. Now if the weather can just work out. Keep your fingers and toes crossed. So that does it for this week's episode. You can find the show notes on our website at starhopping.org/sh057, where you can comment and leave any questions you may have. You can also contact me personally, as I've said before, on Twitter at StarHoppingMan, where I'd love to help you with any astronomy or observing questions, or any questions you might have about the eclipse. So feel free to reach out with any of your questions. I'm here to help. Well, thank you very much for joining me here, and I'll see you next time with more star hopping tips and tricks. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me here on Star Hopping. I publish new episodes every other week on Thursdays. Make sure you subscribe to the channel by clicking on the logo down there in the right-hand corner so you don't miss a single episode. And for some more star hopping content, visit my website at starhopping.org. You can click on this icon right here to visit. See you next time on Star Hopping.